In my top 10 best Crash 4 levels video, I said it was unbelievably difficult to pick 10 levels that I thought were the best, as almost every single level in Crash 4 is top notch. But I've gotta say, making this video was a lot harder. This was originally going to be a top 10, but I literally couldn't even think of 10 levels that I could even bring myself to put into a worst levels list. So, we're going with a top 5 instead. Even saying that, I still feel bad about putting any levels on this list at all, as I don't actually think Crash 4 has any bad levels. So even though I'm calling this the top 5 worst levels in Crash 4, it's not as harsh as it sounds. I mostly enjoy these levels, I just didn't enjoy them as much as other levels in the game. In other words, I don't hate these levels, I just don't think they're as good as everything else the game has to offer. The rules for this video will work slightly differently to the rules for the best levels video. It is, of course, still opinion based, so you're allowed to disagree. Boss fights and flashback tapes won't be counted as levels, just like the best levels video. Level environments and themes and locations and all that played a massive role in deciding what my top 10 best levels were, but since I'm a fan of pretty much all the environments in the game, I can't really fault any levels based on that, so the visuals will still be a factor, but since I like all the visuals, they won't play as much of a role in this list. That applies to the music too. The big factor here will be gameplay and level design. How are the platforming challenges, and more importantly, how enjoyable is playing through the level? Those are the key things I'll be looking at for this list. In the same way as the best levels video, timeline levels will be paired up with their main level counterparts. So, for example, if Booty Calls is on this list, Thahi Blows will be paired up with it, as most of what I would have to say about Booty Calls would also apply to Thahi Blows and vice versa. With all that said, we can dive in. Here are my top 5 worst levels in Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. I really didn't want to put this level on this list, but unfortunately I have to give the number 5 spot to Dragon On. I like this level, don't get me wrong, but I have 2 glaring issues with it. The first issue is the blue gem. You need to go through the whole level without breaking a single crate in order to get the blue gem here, which is fine. This isn't the first time we've had this challenge in a Crash game. We've had the same thing in Turtle Woods in Crash 2. The problem is that it's incredibly easy to accidentally break crates here. Dragon On doesn't give you a lot of room to move around, so the space you have to land without breaking crates can be pretty small at times. And this isn't helped by the fact that Akano and his Dark Matter spin are very prominent in this level. Again, I don't have a problem with how the blue gem is earned, I just think it should have been given to a different level. A more spacious level, like Snow Way Out, maybe. My other problem is with the dragons. I've gotten the Insanely Perfect Relic, Platinum Time Trial Relic, and all the gems from both the regular and inverted versions of this level, and I still have no idea how the dragons actually work. Sometimes when using the Dark Matter spin, Crash will bounce off the dragons. Sometimes he will fall through the dragons, and other times the dragons will kill him. I don't understand what the conditions are for those things happening, because they seem almost entirely random. With enemies like the lions, it's quite simple. The green magic is on the lion's head. If you Dark Matter spin the head, Crash will bounce away, but Dark Matter spin anywhere else and you defeat the lion. It's pretty straightforward. The dragons, on the other hand, seem very inconsistent, which isn't great seeing as they're the whole gimmick of the level. I suppose the silver lining is that it doesn't cause trouble too often, but it is a shame that it caused me any problems at all. Again, I really didn't want to put Dragon On this list at all, since it's an absolutely beautiful level and I did enjoy it immensely, but the problems it has were too significant for me to not mention it, and hence it kicks off our list in the number 5 spot. This is a similar situation to Dragon On in that I wish I didn't have to put it on this list. Crash Landed is a stunning level in so many ways. Conceptually, visually, musically, even the name of the level referencing the cancelled Crash game, it's just spectacular. I can't fault it there. But I can fault it on 3 things where I think Crash Landed botches it up. Firstly, the level is really long. Too long for its own good, which isn't helped by the blue gem path here. It definitely should have been a bit shorter than it turned out to be. The length wouldn't be as big of a deal if it wasn't for the other 2 issues though. The elephant in the room, well, I guess it's not an elephant, but the most commonly discussed issue with this level is the Schnurgle, the little alien puppy dinosaur thing. Yes, it's cute, I know, but the controls for riding it are so wonky. It feels slippery and sluggish to control, which is not a good thing when you need precise, tight and responsive controls to break all the crates. The Schnurgle ride sections can also be quite tricky with the jumps, especially on moving platforms, which again is made harder by those controls. The other issue I have with this level is not one I've seen be mentioned, and that's the excessive amount of ice physics. Crash Landed is coated in this pink, slippery goo. It almost looks like melted strawberry ice cream. I don't know how they managed it, but Crash Landed as a single level has more ice physics than all of the ice levels put together. How is that even possible? I'm fine with ice physics, so long as there isn't too much of it. But you can't go 10 seconds in this level without slipping around on that goo. And again, this isn't helped by the blue gem path, which is almost exclusively goo. It's just so tedious having to slide around like that for so long in such a long level, and it can really suck the enjoyment out of the whole experience. I do like this level a lot, but the problems it has really make it a pain in the neck sometimes. Moving on to our number 3 spot, we have Blast to the Past. Overall, it's an okay level. The environment looks fine, and I like the references to the elementals, but everything else about it is just meh. It's a shame really, because Blast to the Past doesn't do anything wrong, it just doesn't do anything particularly well. Like I said, the environment is fine, but it's pretty forgettable when compared to most of the other environments in the game. It's not a bad environment, it's just that most of the other environments are better. The music for Blast to the Past is basically in the same situation. Again, it's fine, but it's outshined by many other tracks in Crash 4. And then we have the actual gameplay and level design of Blast to the Past. It's weird, because nothing about the level is necessarily bad, but it just doesn't do anything noteworthy. The most memorable thing about the level in my opinion is that one cheeky crate hidden behind a plant at the beginning of the level. The rest of the level is just really easy to forget. And this isn't helped by the fact that Blast to the Past is also pretty short. It's missing a bit of spice, a bit of glamour, a bit of pizzazz, and because it doesn't have any of that, I have to place it in the number 3 spot. Rush Hour. Let me just get 2 details out the way first before I start talking about this level. Firstly, I think both Dingodile and Torna have great gameplay and are really fun to control. Secondly, I think the environment in Rush Hour and the whole snacks dimension is spectacular. They're not the reasons why I've given the number 2 spot to Rush Hour. My biggest problem comes from the length of the level, or perceived length of the level. I don't know if Rush Hour is actually a long level, but it feels like it goes on forever. Dingodile's section especially feels like a drag. It seriously feels like you're plodding along a never-ending path, but I can't really put my finger on why exactly that is. I don't think it's a repetitive level, but I guess it just isn't very exciting, which makes the experience pretty exhausting. I definitely blame the music for Dingodile's section for being a part of it. I don't know if it's just me, but I find Dingodile's music for Rush Hour to be really mind-numbing. That's why I'm using Torna's Rush Hour music for this video, since that song fucking slaps. And speaking of Torna, I find Torna's section of Rush Hour to be much better than Dingodile's, and it actually is pretty fun. It's not without problems though. Rail grinding is a major part of Torna's section, and it is ripe with distant crates you need to break with Torna's hookshot. Usually those distant crates are fine, but since you're stuck on rails here, if you miss your shot or time it wrong, there's no way you're getting that crate. This is especially a problem when you have a number of distant crates in close proximity to one another, making the timing very specific and finicky. And if you're looking to break them all, you'll have to start the whole level over again if you missed them, including Dingadal's section. Honestly, what the hell? It makes going for the perfect relic an absolute nightmare. They should have made Dingadal and Torna's sections separate levels in my opinion. So yeah, despite the name, Rush Hour is a pretty long and slow level. It's a bit of a drag, so it's going in the number 2 spot. Right, here we are. The title of worst level in Crash 4 goes to Bears repeating in its timeline level, Building Bridges. I think the main reason for this is pretty obvious, so let's go through the smaller reasons first. Visually, Bears repeating isn't much different from the preceding level's Stay Frosty. It reuses the ice lab environment and a lot of the same enemies and hazards. The 2D sections also use very similar Kapunawa challenges to the ones in Snow Way Out, so not a lot of originality there either. These things aren't necessarily bad since there's nothing wrong with the environment or those platforming challenges, but I don't think they're doing Bears repeating any favours by reusing the same stuff. The biggest problem with Bears repeating and building bridges though is to do with Polar. Now don't get me wrong, I love that Polar is in the game, but there are some glaring issues with the Polar riding segments of these levels. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but it's very similar to the Schnurgle in Crash Landed. Either Polar has too slippery controls, his hitbox is too small, or it's both. In Crash Landed this wasn't as big of a problem due to how the crates are placed. In Bears repeating and building bridges though, there are a lot of 2x2 stacks of crates, and breaking them all with Polar is a pain. Sometimes Polar will just brush past crates or even run under them, and it's very inconsistent with how he breaks crates. This causes massive issues when going for the insanely perfect relic, and easily resulted in the most unenjoyable part of the game. Now there are some things I like about this level. I do like that Polar makes an appearance, even though he is the core of all suffering in the universe, and I love that the yellow gem path references the bridge levels from Crash 1. Also, Torna's section from building bridges is actually really solid. It's got some tough but fun platforming challenges and gameplay which I can appreciate, but I'm afraid the issues that Bears repeating and building bridges have are way too significant to ignore. So, they take the number 1 spot. And that brings the video to a close. Those were my top 5 worst levels in Crash Bandicoot 4. I should reiterate that I don't actually hate any levels in Crash 4, but these 5 are the levels that I like the least. I'm interested in hearing what your top 5 worst Crash 4 levels are, so do be sure to leave a comment with your own list. And if you enjoyed the video, I encourage you to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.